Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my muse. By what? What else are you?
Bove,
Bo,
Bove,
Bo,
Bove, Bove,
Bove.
Bove,
Uh,
Bove,
Lan-
Bove,
Lan- my
Bove,
co-host Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
Bove, 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 Bove,
Bo.
Bove, Bove,
Our
Bove, Bove,
guest
Bove, Bove, Bove.
Our guest today is one of the best recording engineers in the world and also a phenomenal tuba player, and his name is Andy Bove. And
Wait, oh shoot, I had the wrong interview. Sorry, I thought we were introducing Mike Martin. Is that the next one?
That's the next one.
Oh, okay.
Lance is
Sorry.
obsessed with Bove's name, so he just likes saying it. So, yeah, so that's why this intro was one for the ages. So yeah, Andy Bove. It was awesome getting to talk with him. As you'll hear, he and I go back to when we were 15 years old. True story. When I met Andy Bove, he had a Bart Simpson haircut.
Which is weird because now he has a Marge Simpson haircut.
Yeah, man. Yeah, soft-spoken 15-year-old Andy Bove had short spiked hair. So, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So, and we were at the Boston University Tanglewood Institute together, and I was actually just there with my son yesterday because we had to get out of the summer house because he was driving me nuts. So, and he kept saying, "Let's go to where Daddy learned how to play Tubby the tuba." So, which yeah,
Walmart is not open yet, son.
All right. So the interview was really great with Andy. It was awesome catching up with him. If anyone donates $1,000 per episode, then I will share with you the stories from Andy and my past that would well get me fired from anything forever. But you have to do that for a full calendar year before I will share those with you, and it will be in person. And I'll frisk you to make sure you're not wearing a wire. So, or I'll do the Tony Soprano hug thing, right, where you hug and then you bring the hand around and then pat their chest down. So anyway,
That's more for fun than security, though.
Absolutely, yes. That's how I hug Lance every time I see him. So,
Mm-hmm.
we've got some sponsors. Why don't you talk about the nice people at Duquesne?
Duquesne University, the Mary Papert School of Music, is a proud, well, I'm choosing to believe they are a proud sponsor. They are factually a sponsor, and they support the show thanks largely to Jim Nova. We have a great faculty of
name's not ringing a bell.
Folks at he did all those Star Trek songs.
Oh, the Star Trek songs. Yeah, the John Williams stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. So
Gandalf's theme.
Exactly. He's all the hit. He did all the hit. But anyway, Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University. Lots of really, really cool things going on. Fantastic faculty, all, I think, except for me. Actually, the tuba professor as well, are members of the Pittsburgh Symphony. Lots of cool stuff going on. You can find out more about what's happening there by clicking through the link in the show notes. So thanks very much to Duquesne University.
We also need to thank Parker Mouthpieces. Parker Mouthpieces provides our hosting here at, I almost said TEM. This is not T. Which podcast am I on?
This is T. Shoot.
Is this Serial?
Bove.
Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We also wanted to mention that there are a few ways that you can help to support the show. The first is by donating at Patreon. Thank you so much to everyone who has already done that. What are we up to at this point, Lance? Do you know?
About $65 an episode, something like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, to each of you that has done that, we thank you so much. It's really it means a lot to us. It has enabled us. In fact, I just got a new piece of equipment as the result of our Patreon patrons.
It's a lawnmower, but
Yeah, absolutely. It has absolutely nothing. It's a really fancy hairdryer for my wife. The and we sent Bove a really fancy bottle of spiky hair gel. No, I got a new mixer. So, which is the direct result of our patrons. So, thank you very much for that. It really means a lot, and you can donate as little as $1 an episode, which is going to be just $52 a year. So, we really appreciate it. Everyone who has already gone and done that. You can also share the podcast with a friend. Share it with an enemy. Hell, a download's a download. We really don't care. We take good listeners and really horrible human being listeners too. And I've never actually cleared that with Lance, but that's my official position.
I didn't know there was a difference.
And you can, it's a fine line these days. You can also do us a huge favor by leaving us a rating and a review at on iTunes, which there is a link in the show notes to that. We are trying to get to our next goal is 75 ratings and 50 reviews. We're at 58 ratings and 35 reviews right now. We had a couple of really great reviews recently. One of them is from June 17th, 5 stars. If you're a brass player and are ever in need of a good laugh, this is the best podcast for you. I laughed so hard while listening to the Alex Lappins and Tony Tortora episode that I had trouble driving straight. This podcast is also a great source of meaningful insight, knowledge, inspiration. He's got the wrong podcast, and is a constant stream of trumpet jokes. No, this is the right podcast.
That part is the right one, yeah.
Andrew and Lance, keep up the good work, and thank you with the hashtag pray for Jens.
Oh, poor Jens.
Yeah, poor Jens. So, which also reminds me, you can find us on Instagram, pray the number 4 Jens. You can also find us on Twitter these days at the same handle. So thank you to everyone who has taken just a couple of moments to be able to do that. That helps us. People find us when they search, or the people also listen to function. On iTunes. I think once you hit a certain number of reviews and ratings, then that tends to pop up a lot, which is how a lot of people discover podcasts. So thank you very much to everyone that has done that. And I think that's about it. Do we want to talk about any of the Supreme Court decisions or religion or anything else like that, or are we good? Next week. All right, that's perfect. Next week, Lance is going to break down the latest Supreme Court decisions. So that's for our. I would say that's
in
for
rap
our,
form.
That's for our. Okay, see, I was going to say that's for our patrons only, which was going to make all of our patrons leave. But now that you said it's in rap form, I bet we get a few pings. Because I would pay way more than $1 every 2 weeks to hear you rapping legal analysis. So we we might have to. We might. Yeah, there you go. He's the.
What rhymes with legal?
He's the Jeffrey Toobin of the pseudo hip hop world.
Beagle, regal.
God, heaven help us. All right, so it's bad when you're going to my dear friend Andy Bove for sanity. So as you're about to hear. So without further ado, here is our discussion with Andy Bove of Bove Audio.
Bove.
And today we are joined by one of my oldest friends. His name is Andrew Bove. Bove, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I'm doing neat, however the hell you're supposed to say that. So, Lance, what do you want to ask Andy?
Nothing. I'm good. We're done.
I think that's it.
Right before we started rolling, Andrew Bove likes to be prepared. We do not. And so he asked us, as we were talking before the episode, what constitutes the perfect podcast episode? And so we thought, what better way to start this interview uncomfortably
Whoa!
than try and tackle this. What happened?
I'm getting a phone call. Really?
What?
Every time that every
Your
time
face.
that every time that Apple updates any iOS, they always, because they're pretty much the devil, they always set to default that it's like, okay, if I get a phone call, I want all 19 of these devices to all vibrate at one time. And FaceTime is the same way, where it's like I have iPhones that I haven't used in 5 years that I didn't even know are charged that are like lighting up in the middle of the night because my niece wants to talk to me. So yeah,
This is what constitutes a perfect
that was
podcast episode.
that was my damn insurance company, but I just shut my phone off. So where were we, Lance?
I can't remember. We were talking about how perfect our podcast episodes are.
That's right. They're always very well polished. There's never phone calls from insurance companies.
What would constitute now, Andy? Did you mean our podcast in particular, or just podcast episodes in general?
Yeah, before I do anything, I always like to think about what I'm trying to do. So I was thinking,
we've
I was
never
thinking
done
about
that.
I was thinking about your podcast, and I was thinking, well, what would make the best brass junkies like
brass
off, the
brass
name right.
jumpies.
Brass jumpies. That's pretty good.
There you go.
I figured we should. I'm obviously not the best speaker here, so I want to make sure we have the right goal in mind before we get started.
We could.
So I figured I'd ask you guys, what's going to make this the best episode ever?
Well,
You're nailing it so far.
Yeah,
Brass jumpies is
before
what
we
it-
do that, yeah, that's going to be a spin-off. It's going to be like Frasier was, it's like, but it's us interviewing people while we jump out of a plane. There we go.
Oh, see, I thought it was too much caffeine. We were just like we couldn't hang. And then Jim Nova, remember Jim Nova had a different. Well, his phone's autocorrect decided that our show was not the Brass Junkies; it was the Breast Chunkies.
Yeah.
Which I assume has to do with chicken products. I don't know what it means.
For sure. Parts is parts. All right. So, yeah, that's a good question, Andy. And I know you go by Andrew primarily these days. Is that right?
If you type my name somewhere official where I have to look fancy,
Right.
you can write Andrew.
There you go.
Okay.
But
Oh, sorry.
normal humans can call me Andy.
I've known him as Andy forever, so it's hard for
And-
me to say.
And if you've known me from college, or if you know people who went to college with me, you call me Bove.
Right.
Because
Or the
when we were in college, our teacher had to call us Bove and Hitz
Right.
because he didn't want to get confused.
This is so. Andy and I, Bove and I, went to.
Oh,
We were in the Empire Brass Seminar together, starting in the summer of 1991. We were at Tanglewood together for 3 summers, 91, 92, and 93. I remember I don't remember whether I called him or he called me in April before our 3rd summer together and said, like, and I was like, hey, man, guess where I'm going to college? And he said, where? And I said, Northwestern. And he started laughing. He said, me too. And I said, no kidding. And then I was like, that's awesome. And then he said, Ned Hale, who was another guy who had been at Tanglewood with us for multiple summers, he said, Ned's going too. I was like, what? So then we were at Northwestern for 4 years together. And then we both went and started master's degrees at Arizona State with Sam Palafian together. So we were like inseparable for almost 10 years. So, and then we went our separate ways. This is the first time we've spoken since. We need a little bit of a timeout, but yeah. Now then we were in a fantasy football league for a while until I quit. And I was the commissioner, so that was kind of interesting. And here we are. But Bove is one of the most talented people that I know in the music business.
Prove
Prove it, yeah. Do something to impress us, Andy. He is. He's not dance monkey dance. He's not only a monster tuba player, but he has also become a world renowned recording engineer. And he's quite the entrepreneur, actually. So, Bove, can you give us how did you can you tell us about like maybe starting with the Empire Brass Seminar and then kind of get us up to today in terms of how the hell you got into recording so heavily?
Yeah, some of the first things I did that made me excited about music was listening to recorded music. I know I had a tape of, I think it was the University of Michigan band playing patriotic music that was awesome. And I used to play it all the time. And it would just like play really loud, you know. It was like the Stars and Stripes Forever, and you know, like a whole list of things. It's like
So
that was the first.
all the fight songs on it too.
No, it didn't have fight songs. It was just like patriotic music.
Oh,
Maybe it had some like John Williams, and I can't remember anything else.
The Team America theme song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't even think it was branded like any University of Michigan thing. It was called like, you know, patriotic music for band or something, and I had to do some research to figure out. It was like something it cost $1 or something, but I loved it. But so I always loved listening to recordings, and whenever I had money, I would buy CDs. And so throughout the time that I was learning to play, you know, there was always that was a big inspiration. Like I was into live music too as well, like everyone. Something about recordings was special for me. And at BUTI at the Tanglewood Empire Brass Seminar, it was always really fun. Where every week we had to play a concert. All the brass quintets would play. They would record the whole thing, and then the next day in the morning, you had to show up, and one of the teachers would be there, and then they would proceed to like make fun of everyone who messed up.
Yeah, it was, and if you got Scott Hartman, it was a much different vibe than if you got Rolf Smedvig. So yeah, it just kind of depended on who you got. So yeah,
I remember Jeff Kernow probably had the most fun ones. I don't know, he was the most heartless, I think, when it came to making fun of the people who messed up. But
yeah, I think you're right, but he could get away with it because he was like such a sweet guy and had a smile on his face. So, yeah, and Eric Rusk was intense. Yeah, it was like they were all they were professional touring chamber musicians. They were crazy. They were completely insane. So
they would talk about making CDs because they often would rehearse for a CD during the summer with us. They would rehearse every day after lunch, and we would listen to them put these arrangements together and like refine things. And you know, it was pretty amazing to watch that. And then you'd know they were going to go record maybe in September. And then sometime the next spring, a CD would come out, and you'd be like, "Oh, I was there. I remember when they built that arrangement."
Right.
You know, so that was inspirational to be part of that little process.
Pretty incredible to be a fly on the wall for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and it'd be, I don't know how you would do it. It'd be fascinating to talk, you know, figure out how many current professional brass players had that sort of apprenticeship and got to witness that. And how many of them went on to become entrepreneurial, and how many of them went on to do the crazy knucklehead circus touring ride thing. And because that was a huge, I mean, before you guys did that and after you guys did that, I heard from lots and lots of players who were around there and got to experience it. And they did it. I don't even know if they knew the significance moving forward of what they were doing in terms of encouraging and inspiring your generation of players. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it is kind of nuts. Yeah, it was like overload of information. Yeah, it was really overload. And I joke about it, but there was that was the first examples of a chamber group that was living with each other basically 24/7, and me watching the dynamics of all of that, and seeing seeing the different personalities. So yeah, you don't play brass instruments with that kind of an opinion and not be an opinionated human as well. So not that Andy has strong opinions. He's much more of a gentleman about keeping them to himself when that's more appropriate socially than, say, I don't know, I am. But the you know, it was so fascinating on so many levels. We were so blessed to have been able to witness all that. So let's see
here.
We
have a guest?
Yeah, we do have a guest.
Andrew Bove. Oh yeah. And
hey, how's it going?
Speaking of which, hey, have you, Andrew? Do you have a browser in front of you?
Yes.
Do I
either one?
Yes.
I want you to both do this. And Bove, maybe you've already done so, but type in Andy Bove into Google and see the photos that come up. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. The cross-section of humans that have the same name as you is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that is. There is the second one is Bove looking quite badass with a chimbasso. But yeah, that's a collection of characters.
Lineup, right? It looks like Well, there's a guy with a kid. Okay, we'll give him a pass. But the one guy,
There's a couple guys with beards who are looking pretty.
I know,
stuffy.
right? We got to find out who these Boves are. But anyway, so it's really, really spectacular. And then there's that guy, Andy Cohen. I don't know how he's up there, but he's there now. And then a woman from the 1940s.
And it's her obituary. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty great.
So Bove, what was it like studying with Rex Martin at Northwestern?
Studying with Rex Martin was awesome because he was so he really like focused on the fact that music was the most important thing that you were working towards with all the things you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe that sounds, I don't know if that sounds cheesy to some people or something, but like all the reason why you're doing everything is because of the music. And then but it was such a good like theory or a strategy for like many things. It's even like even if I'm making a recording today and I want to think about a bunch of things that are technical or that I want to do to make the recording just sound better from a sonic perspective or techno perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But then you actually think about it, like the music is most important. That's what we're doing here. So,
right.
That was his big focus. And so I was kind of like apply that to kind of everything I do.
Right. Yeah. I loved the studio classes that he did. I mean, and there was a lot of nuts and bolts of of how to play this excerpt and and how to improve your soft playing and all of that stuff. But there was also some really big thinking concept type things in terms of just in terms of what music is, and almost getting into like the sociology of art and just like, but not in like a real hooey way. I mean, in a way that was directly informing how I was playing the tuba. So, which was pretty cool. It's shocking how young he was when we were there. He was like in his early 30s. It's crazy.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
The way he created an environment where the students were expected to like think, was
right.
Just think about what you're doing and like critically think about things. He would privately criticize different things to you in an effort, I think, to make use your brain,
right.
and think about things. And I don't know.
Can you think of an example of that? I mean, can you illustrate some of what went into that?
He would. Let me think. He would often play. He'd often play music that you might not have listened to before,
mm-hmm.
and then either have you tell him what you think, or he would tell you something about it that he liked. He had a recording that he loved. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. Was it called like The Band? Hitz, do you remember this? It was like his favorite CD.
Right.
I think it was called The Band. Was the name of the band?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yep.
And so when he played it once, he's like, "Isn't this the best thing, Bove?" He's like, "Check this out." And I was like, "Well, sounds like a band." I was like, that piano sounds terrible, and then he's like, and then he was explaining what he loved about it was the groove, So then I
right.
listened to it from a different perspective, because at first I was thinking, man, this recording sounds horrible, like who did this? Like musicians sound good, but like it's like low tech, and
mm-hmm.
it's like I couldn't understand. But so then then he would kind of tell you something, then you could take from that. So then we would get together and maybe in Hitz's like lounge at his dorm, listen to music, and we would talk about what we liked about this music, or what we liked about music, or what we hated about this, and with all the people, with everyone like sharing ideas and discussing, I think it really helps your brain, get smart.
Yeah, he would get real specific too. Like, he would put on the band and he would say like, listen to the phrasing of Levon Helm, the drummer, or he also he's who introduced me to Tom Waits, for example. When he was playing Tom Waits before, he used to play music, and I think that I don't know if he did this as much with everybody, but I like totally flipped out. Every time that he played me something, I was like way in, and so he pretty much did that every time I had a lesson. He had something playing when I was walking in the door. But Tom Waits, and he immediately, because the first reaction that just about anybody has to Tom Waits is that his voice is like, it's just crazy, I mean, and he immediately was like, get past the tone of his voice, and not that he even, and I don't even know if he used those words because he wasn't even criticizing it, but he basically was like, so not get past meaning get over, just like go beyond that and then listen to this guy's phrasing. And then I listened and I was like, my jaw was on the floor as he was playing me, something from like Swordfish Trombones or something like that. And yeah, all of that, whether it's Jerry Garcia, soloing over Eyes of the World, or Tom Waits, singing Shore Leave or whatever. It all informs my Bach. It informs my Zappa. It informs anything I play on the tuba. So yeah, we got a very well-rounded, musical education.
One other really important thing that he discussed with me that I'm thinking he didn't discuss with you is that I remember he said one day, he said, Bove, you need a little more confidence. And he said, I'm uniquely prepared to help you with this. He says, because I have too much confidence.
Yeah. It turns out that is not a talk that he had to have with me. I bet he had to have some other ones with me. But wait a minute. That reminds me. There was kids, stay in school, don't do drugs. But the Bove's like, oh wait, where is this going? There was a quarter, a sophomore quarter, sophomore quarter of my fall year, fall quarter of my sophomore year. I didn't. Let's just say I spent a lot of time not in the classroom where music theory was held. Would be kind of the easiest way to put a fine point on it. And so there was a full credit class called musicianship, which was a combination of music theory and music history. And let's just say that I failed that class, and I was like pretty much all A's and B's for my entire life, mostly A's. I was a really good student. But my lack of, let's say, showing up or doing the homework or really learning anything caught up with me in music theory. So there were 4 credit hours that you would take for a full load, and this was a full credit hour, and I failed it. Well, that combined with the fact that so this is just one class I was doing really poorly in, and this was completely legitimate. The Bove will probably remember this, that we were in piano together. And that poor old lady, Mrs. Cock was her name. Don't laugh, Lance. It was her name. That's how she pronounced it.
What was her first name?
I don't know. But that's reminding me of a guest who kept on saying the name Dick Naylor over and over again. But Mrs. Cock was this very old woman. And we had the headsets on. And Bove and I would always partner up in piano class. And when we were supposed to be rehearsing this, whatever piece it was, Bove and I were just screwing around, and I would have it on like the like the funk piano setting, and we're we're soloing over grooves. And the way we could get away with this was that as soon as that she would plug into the different, this was this was high tech at the time. She could, from her console, could suddenly be listening in and be a part of of our little rehearsal over headphones. And as soon as she would plug in, both Andy and I would hear this because she had the microphone basically in her mouth. And so we would decide ahead of time.
Like Darth Cock?
Like Darth... Oh, no, you didn't. All right. So we would decide ahead of time, okay, I'll be the one that talks. And so as soon as as soon as the Darth Cock would start, then we would both just stop. And then as we were hitting the buttons for the normal piano sounds, if it was my turn to talk, I would say, okay, Andy, let's take it one more time for measure 4. And listen, I'm going to watch my shift. And then we would start playing. And then as soon as the breathing stopped, we would go back to, trying to become the next Herbie Hancock. So anyway, she was 80, and that was 20 years ago. So if she's still alive, and maybe she listens to the podcast, who knows? But Bove was accompanying me for my final, like on the tuba, and I was accompanying him on a very simple piece. That was the final for that quarter. And Bove got like legitimately sick at finals time. I don't know if you remember this, Andy, but like we had to cancel our piano final and we just rescheduled it. So we got an incomplete, which doesn't affect your GPA at all. But if you take an incomplete and a half credit class and you fail a full credit class, then you get put on something that is called academic probation.
Dun, 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 dun.
And guess who my advisor was, Bove?
Rex Martin.
Rex Martin. It turns out that was the truth. So the first lesson that I had, winter quarter, that was not the most fun 5 minutes I spent with Mr. Martin in a room. Yeah, he was, I'll have to clean it up. But he was like, "Do you enjoy studying with me?" I was like, yes, like it means everything. He's like, so you do realize that you were in the process of bleeping this up, right? I was like, yes, sir. Although he was a little happier than George Hitz was about it. So thanks for getting sick, Andy. You got me put on academic probation, dude.
If I had known, I could have toughed it out. Drooled all over the piano or whatever was going on.
What would you have guys played? What was the tune? Did you play the same tune or different tunes? Was it like Asleep in the Deep or one of those deals? Or
It was easier than that.
No, yeah, the piano part was way easier than that. Yeah, neither one of us. Which is weird because we both practiced all the time and took class super seriously. So you'd think that we would have ended up as better piano players than either of us did. I think you were better than me, but that's not really a high bar.
When I showed up for graduate school at Juilliard, they have to put you in a piano class.
Oof.
And so you go for a little audition thing, so they figure out what level to put you in. They had like 3 levels. And so and I mean there's a lot of practice rooms. There's a lot. They have a room, they have a floor of the building that's pretty much all Steinways, and there's people playing that are piano players that are practicing. But so you wait in front of a room and then you go inside. And I brought along the hardest piece. It was the last piece in the book that we learned at Northwestern. It was like the pinnacle of piano playing. This book, and I practiced it over the summer, and so I went in there and I nailed it. I destroyed it. And then the person looked at me, and they were like, "Okay, what else do you have?" So I said, I don't have anything else I prepared. This is the hardest piece. And they said, well, here, just maybe just sight read this. And they put a piece in front of me that was composed by Brahms.
What?
Okay.
Like
and you had to,
Johannes?
It was like real music. And so I played about 2 measures of it, and they put me in I forget now the level. I think it was level 1 minus, or something. It was like the predecessor to level 1 or something like that.
Oh my.
That's awesome. That's that's really good. That reminds me of when in graduate school, the placement exams that we had that you had to pass the comps or whatever for grad school, and the music history one that I went and I sat down and I knew I didn't study at all for it, and I sat down and I basically just read all 7 pages of the test twice, and I then stood up and walked home. And I handed it in, and the whole room was like, there was like a record needle, and I was like, yeah, there's no way I can even get like a 40 on this test. So like, I'm not gonna sit here and like try and eke out a 20. I mean, an F is an F. So I just kind of tried to remember as many terms as I could to maybe study next time. And then I got a gig before I had to finish grad school, which I highly recommend to any kids out there that also didn't know anything about music history. So, but stay in school, don't do drugs.
So, Bove, compare the teaching styles of Rex Martin and Samuel J. Palafian.
J. Samuel Palafian.
Well, pick a J.
I always think about that the 3 teachers I spent the most time with were Rex Martin and Sam Palafian and Warren Deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 of them, I always felt had really different teaching styles. And it was kind of Sam, who I studied with a little in high school in the summer, like we discussed. And then he was for a year in when I started a master's degree at Arizona State. So it was kind of like going back to him, which was totally different. But it would seem like Rex Martin would, for me, it's weird because these teachers, they're so good, and that they're going to, I think that they really customize what they're doing for each person.
Sure.
Obviously.
Yep.
So like Rex was really focused on basics, like trying to make sure that I had a tone that was good, making sure that you could use it, and that your rhythm was really good, and that you're really focused on the music. And then when I studied with Sam Palafian, it was like that. When I first studied with him in high school, I remember him tapping me on the head with a pencil, telling me to subdivide. I still remember, like, it hurt. Like, he tapped it on pretty hard. And then I guess it was in like the 10th grade or something. I had no clue, but I thought I was the best, and I realized I was the worst. You had to practice. So, then
fast forward 3 years, and Rex had to tell you needed more confidence. So that pencil really did a lot of damage to you, man.
Exactly. And so Rex did things like, if I was sort of like afraid to make a big splash, like if you're afraid to put yourself out there, so something, getting a little bit of confidence to, not worry about messing up, or not making sure you're really going for something and make it great instead of just being like okay all the time. So so Rex really like helped me with that sort of psychologically, also with the basics, with making a tone, focusing on music. Returning to Sam Palafian then was I had talked with him about where should I go to college, and he said you need to go to somewhere that's totally different than Northwestern was, so you can be well-rounded. And so I applied to a bunch of schools, and I really wanted to go to Juilliard because he said you need to study with Warren Dick. He's quite a bit different than Rex Martin in the way he plays as a person, his teaching. He said that would be a great asset for you. And so I applied to Juilliard, and no one graduated that year. And so they sent you a letter that said, here's your check back. You can't apply because we have no openings. There's no audition, nothing. And so I was like, oh, what do I do? And so that's when I Sam said I could come to ASU and leave if I felt like it. And so that would be great. And so so I went with Sam, and Sam was really focused then on preparation for performances and auditions and things like that. We spent an awful lot of time like drilling stuff, and like drilling performances, figuring out how to do your best, when it was money time, so there were things like there was a concerto competition, and where we worked on Vaughan Williams concerto all the time. And he would say, show up at my office at 8 a.m., no warm-up, we're just going to play the concerto, things like that. He really wanted to like drill performances. And so when it came time to audition for Juilliard later, I felt really confident because Sam had really put the finishing touches on a nice performance I could put together under any circumstances. Like, he was super big on preparation and that aspect of, when it's time to play your music, like it comes out the way you want it to, like then. So I got a big thing out of that from him.
Well, and then moving on to Warren. So fill out the set.
Yeah. So Warren was he was very practical about playing in an orchestra, and so he would often talk about things such as, like, there's one really interesting part of that was where he said sometimes in an orchestra you need to make enough sound to serve the music the right way, and even if your sound is no longer any good at a certain dynamic level, if the music needs like the oomph there, it's something you have to do. And so that was something where my the teachers before, no one had ever said that, like that was always like, make sure you keep everything beautiful at every time, and so like Warren didn't care about that. But he was also focused on the same end goal, which was the music. With him, I studied a lot about interpretation of like orchestral music. Really wanted to focus on that because I knew that was his forte, and so we worked on that a lot. But it was a different approach to tone that he would teach that I would learn from Sam or from Rex. And so I feel like
in terms of the physical, what you would do, or the equipment, or what you were listening for, or what?
It's in terms of the end goal, like the tone you are trying to create. So, like from an aesthetic level. So, and I found that in my career now, when I play, I feel like I have the freedom to know that a lot of different things are okay, and to choose the way I want to interpret something based on what's going to work the best. And I don't really get hung up on whether oh, did I make a bad sound here, or is it beautiful enough? Maybe not. Maybe it is. So like I feel like I have a lot of different options because I know there's a lot of kind of been through a lot of situations. So the different teachers' approaches, I kind of apply which one it is I think is going to work the best for this.
I bet that's made you a really good teacher as well.
I hope so.
Yeah. Let's get into your recording engineering. It's crazy how much you've. It seems like at one point that's not what you were doing, and then the next thing I knew, that was like you were at the top of that game, and it was like, wait, what happened? And I wasn't surprised because when you decide you're into something, you work your tail off. But can you talk to us about how you talked about kind of being interested in how things sounded and all that, but how did you actually get into charging people to be a recording engineer?
I always recorded things. There was a chapel at Northwestern where I don't know how I did it. Somehow I sweet talked the lady who was like at the office in the chapel. I'm not even sure how because you didn't say anything most of the time. But so I would go and practice in the chapel on like Tuesday mornings, Thursday mornings when there was nothing going on. I would bring a recorder in there. And so it started out where, your teacher always says, record yourself, right? Every good teacher will say to your student, record yourself, listen to it, think about what's wrong and fix it, right? So I'd record myself all the time. And I was even thinking about how to make the recording sound better. So not because I thought I was supposed to, but just because I had to. Like that was part of me. I come from a family of people who make things, so like my great grandfather on one side was from Italy and he was a shoe repairer, and his sons were into engineering and things like that. And so my dad and his brothers were engineers, but so electrical engineers or, making computer things. But so anyways, that's part of me. So I always couldn't resist thinking about the technology of stuff. So
what variables were you messing around with at that point then?
Say that again?
Which variables were you changing to kind of tinker with this?
I was experimenting with microphone position and the position in the room that I was sitting. So I had a small church. It was made out of stone. And so I could sit anywhere and I could put the microphone anywhere. And so I did a lot of experimenting with that just because I could. And then I remember, and so then moving on, I would record groups that I played with. So like if we had a live concert, we'd record it. And so I always tried to make it sound good so we could use it as a demo for something else. And probably a breaking point was a group I was in was called the Extension Ensemble. And we released a CD called New York Presence.
It's awesome. That's one of my favorite brass quintet albums of all time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so we worked really hard on that, and we hired the best guy we could find at the time. His name was Adam Abeshouse, and Sam Palafian recommended him to us, I think on a recommendation to him from Joe Alessi. He's a great guy. He lives in just north of the city, New York City. And so we got a grant to help us pay for it because we had a lot of new music on there. And so we wanted to make a second CD because that one came out so well. And so we had him all lined up again to help us. And we didn't get as much of a grant that time. So we kind of had to call off the project. Maybe we tried to hire someone else because someone knew someone who knew somebody who was willing to do it for like $500 or something. You can imagine how that day of recording turned out. And they said, Bove, can't you just do this for us? You know how to do this stuff. And so then
the curse of being competent at things.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, let me try and figure this out. So I bought a little bit better equipment than I had, and then, and that worked out well. And then, and as far as you asked, like, how did it go from people paying me for it? I had a wonderful client and friend. Her name is Anne Ellsworth. She's a French horn player, and she was a freelance player in New York City, and she had a live recording that was made of a concerto that she played, and there was a recording from a rehearsal, and she said, "Could you know how to do this stuff, right? Could you make 2 edits for me in it?" Like I'd like it, I missed the note in the concert, and I want to have the one from the rehearsal there, so then I could, enjoy the performance for myself, just whatever. And so I think she paid me $50, and so I did that for her, and that kind of led one thing to another, and that's how it started.
And what were you editing in at that point? You weren't cutting tape. Was it digital?
No, yeah, that was digital. I used the free program Audacity to make that edit. There were 2 edits, and I think the first person to, let's see, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, the first client to hire. Gosh, I think I'm wondering if I'm remembering this correctly. So that horn player, Ann Ellsworth, she's subsequently made 3 solo French horn albums with me, and they're very unique and cool music. You can check it out. But I think the first recording that I did that was like the whole thing that I was kind of in charge of was the Sonoran Brass Quintet who are from Phoenix, and so they a good friend of mine named Chuck Kerrigan was the tuba player in that group.
Not ringing a bell.
so Hitz knows Chuck, and so the producer for that album was a guy named Sam Palafian.
Not ringing a bell.
And so we recorded it in a church in Arizona, and yeah, Arizona. It's a place in the southwestern United States, and so that was the first time I had to record like a whole like something that we knew it was going to be a whole disc right off the bat, and I got to work with Sam, with him as the producer. I pretty much learned everything I know about producing now from that one session.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 3 days of sitting in church and listening to music, making it better. And so that was probably the first thing. I think I've made, I guess maybe that was in 2000 and I'm not even 2000.
So what did you learn from Sam about producing?
It was the way in which you talk to the people who are playing. Mm-hmm. So, because you have to kind of like be them. You want to try to like morph into them so that you can like talk to yourself. It seemed like, you want to tell them the things that they need to know to make. You don't want to just talk to them just for the heck of it, or talk to them because you're, like he would say things privately to me, but when the microphone was on, he was only saying things that were going to make the next take the way it needs to be.
Right.
So watching him handle that, and if people were getting a little, so there was like the musical things like that, and then there was also the psychological things where you have to, if someone's feeling a little down, you have to pump them up.
Right.
Right. And if people are getting a little edgy, sometimes you need to, make them laugh, and so you're like a psychologist kind of, because you just want to maximize their performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so watching him do that was great, because then I went on to many of the next recordings I made. I was the producer, and so I was just trying to handle them. I was trying to be like a mini Sam, as best I could, try and help the people succeed, get them pumped up, or take them down a notch, or help them figure out what they need to do with the music. Because, the musicians are awesome. You just have to get them firing on all cylinders.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. I wish that I had had that kind of an experience with Sam, but a few years back when I was about to do my first producing professionally, I called Sam, and I just pulled it up instantly because it's in Evernote. It's called Sam Palafian Advice on Producing. And, yep, and he, he talked to me for, 20 minutes, and it was just, bullet point after bullet point after bullet point after bullet point. Get your head into the mic and out of playing the tuba, because he warned me of how many times I've been on the other end, and, to... never settle for anything but the best, just listen to really great music. He told me about the Better Ear app, which he told me to play around with beforehand to make sure that my ear was super fine-tuned, before heading in there. He said that you're the continuity expert, in terms of tempos and all of those other things. And like you just said, he talked about, about being a psychologist. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter. Lance and I just a couple of weeks ago, we had a recording session that went down like asininely easy with cones and tones. Like, it was unbelievable. Like 4 people, or three of them and me, who were like the 3 of them just phenomenal players who have all done a ton of recording sessions and who were all crazy prepared. And it was just like we were just flying through it. And yet there was a couple of times when the producer needed to, suggest that we take 5, or, we can come back to this or whatever, like just to keep things moving. And that's 4 guys who genuinely get along basically all the time and were prepared, and it was going really well. And you still need to kind of be a little bit of the psychological traffic cop at times. So he's so good at that stuff. So good at that. Very cool. So that's how you learn to be a producer. And so then I love the fact that somebody was just like, hey, I bet you could do this. And your band did, and then you recorded it. And then someone was like, hey, I bet you could do this. And then they had you, using a free program to be able to do a couple of edits. Do you have advice for someone who's looking to get into recording either themselves or other people more? And if I can put in a quick plug, Andy did an interview with me for A Band Director's Guide to Everything Tuba, a collection of interviews with the experts, and also revised it a little bit to be trombone specific for the trombone book. And the tuba one is going to be available on Audible as an audiobook very, very, very soon. I just did the final submit as we're recording this last night. But there's like really, really great advice on how to get into recording yourself and in general. And he talks about equipment a little bit. That's worth the $10 all by itself. So, but what advice would you give somebody who's looking to get started on this?
It's really easy to get started learning about recording. If you want to get any good at it, it takes a lot of work and listening. But when you start out, all you need is some musicians, and you can record something. And so if you have the most basic equipment, it could even just be a Zoom or something like that, and just figure out how to make it sound good. And then you can read about things on the internet, like microphone positioning techniques, and then you try them and see what they sound like, and then you figure out why they're sounding the way they are, and you kind of take it from there. As far as you sort of need to observe other people doing things. I don't know if I never could have figured out how to do anything unless I was involved in it here and there. Like, right. That experience with Sam really helped me. Watching the engineers recording the extension ensemble, it was just watching how he functioned, what his setup looked like. There was also some great with the internet now. There were some recording engineers I spoke to when I was starting out. I would just email them questions. So there was an engineer named Alan Meyerson who records Hans Zimmer's film scores. And I saw a picture of one of his sessions, and he had a couple of microphones in an interesting spot. And so I sent him an email. I was like, hey, what were you doing with those mics? And the guy emailed me back. And we emailed a couple of times. He was super nice. I couldn't believe it.
That's awesome. When you said Hans Zimmer, for some reason I heard Hans Gruber, and I thought that you were talking about the villain from the first Die Hard movie. I was like, wait, what? So sorry, continue.
And I've always been a huge fan of the Telarc recordings of the Empire Brass.
Yep.
Probably because we were there when they were preparing for them. It goes back to the time at BUTI Tanglewood. And so I would listen to those a ton, and I would always read in the back. In the back, they always have a list of all the equipment that they used and the location and the people who worked on it. And so, I noticed there were 2 CDs that I thought sounded great. They used 2 different microphones. One was using a Schoeps MK2, which is an omnidirectional microphone. The other one was using a Schoeps MK21, which is the shape, like it's kind of a blend between a cardioid and an omnidirectional microphone. So, which means it's a little bit more directional than the MK2, which picks up sound all around it. So that changes the sound, not a ton, but a little bit. And so I sent Michael Bishop, who worked for Telarc at the time that company didn't exist anymore. So I found him on an internet forum and sent him an email asking him, why'd you use it in the same location, the two different types of microphones? He replied back like really fast again. I was like, these people are great, and so super nice guys helping out the next generation of people is like, it's amazing today that you can just contact experts, and
Wow.
so it's pretty cool.
This is actually eerie to me because just yesterday, I have no idea, especially for both the podcasts, we get way ahead before the summer just because summer travel and connectivity issues and all that. Yesterday, I interviewed John Parks, who I don't know if you remember him from Northwestern. He was there when we were. He's a percussionist. He was a master's student. But he is now the Florida State percussion teacher. And he was on TEM because he has developed a full-blown professional recording studio as a part of his percussion studio, and they've made like four albums, and a lot of his students have gone on to careers of recording people in addition to percussion. And when I asked him how he really got into that, because similar story to you, and he happens to be doing this within academia, but he actually talked about all the forums and about how incredibly nice people were and of recording engineers and how quickly they got back to him. I just had that conversation with him exactly 24 hours ago. That's kind of funny. So the short answer is you were curious about all this stuff, and that you're like reading the CD booklet and that you're asking questions, and that's really good stuff.
That's a thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. One of the things you're talking about is that how accessible people are and how helpful they want to be. And if you're into the thing that they're into, they want to do anything they can to kind of help talk about that. So
yes.
Just muster the courage to ask the question. The worst that you'll get is a non-response.
Couple of things. We're starting to run out of time. I want to ask you, there's actually three things quickly. First one is, what was it like to record the entire brass section of the Metropolitan Opera?
That was fun. I've recorded 3 albums for the Met Opera brass section now, and the first one was very stressful because they had never done anything like that before. It was Dave Krause and Javier Gondara were friends. That's a trumpet player and a horn player, and I think they probably cooked up the idea, on a lark, and put it into practice. And so the tricky thing that time was that they knew of some recordings I had made, and they had a high recommendation from some musicians that they trusted, and I had played with the Met as an extra musician occasionally at that point, but not enough to know them that well, and so while they knew they were going to get something good, but they hadn't done it before, and no one had ever worked. Many of the musicians maybe didn't know, maybe they recognized me, but had never worked. So I knew that that I had to work hard to get their trust and make things go well. And it was a big logistical challenge to get all those musicians in the same place at the same time. Many people might not know, but they have, for the brass instruments, for most of the instruments, they have twice as many players as another orchestra would. Not for tuba, but they have 1 tuba, but I think they have 3 tenor trombones and 2 bass trombones and 8 horn players, and they have 2 principal trumpets, and so because they play so many concerts, so they have a lot of musicians. And so then there's a lot of people who play with the Met Opera as extra musicians, because whenever there's stage band parts, they're always being played by a separate band on stage. They don't double things like some smaller companies would. So there's a lot of brass musicians employed by the Met throughout the year. So they pull from those players to put together the ensemble. So the first album we made was there were a lot of unknowns, right? So you had to really be on your toes. So I remember being like amped up, but we did a nice job, I think, and the next two albums were fun. I remember the third album was we played vocal music of Gabriele, which they want to do a Gabriele album, but not like, it's been done before. So they played arrangements of vocal music by Gabriele. And we recorded at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, which is an enormous space and has a really tremendous sound. And at that point, I had their trust that things would go well, and I knew how, and they knew the drill. I knew the drill. That one was an awful lot of fun because they were playing this tremendous music in this space that's like so large. And the biggest problem there was there's some peacocks that actually live in a garden outside, and at night they walk around and sometimes they make noise. Wow. So that was probably the biggest issue there. That's
funny. Wow. That must have been something. I actually haven't heard that third album. I think I'm going to go check that out. So the next thing I want to ask you about is the epic low brass Game of Thrones theme. And there is a video of this, which we will absolutely link to in the show notes, that has almost 1 million views. And it's just phenomenal. How the hell did all of that come about?
Well, in being involved in technology, one of my hobbies has been photography and videography. It came about maybe, the past 10 years of my life. It's very similar to audio. And so with my wife, we have a video and content creation business. And I'm kind of the technical person for that. And she's the people person.
That's Purple Critter, right?
Yeah, that's Purple Critter Media.
All right.
And so we make, so we have the capability to make a video content at a high quality level. So for that, I had saw the success of people online playing covers of popular music and making it look cool. And a lot of people consume their music today via YouTube. And so I sort of had the idea of playing something like that. And there's a couple of guys in town here who I knew had contrabass trombones, and they have them for the occasional film score that needs them, and I enjoy playing cimbasso, and so I figured why not try to get as many contrabass trombone players and cimbasso players one location at the same time, and let's play something that the normal population would get excited about. And so I came up with the idea of that, and Brian Mahaney is an excellent arranger. He made the arrangement for that. He's a trombone player, lives here in New York. And he said, I'll make an arrangement. And I thought maybe, I was kind of nervous asking people because when I first had the idea, because I thought people would think it was a stupid idea or what are we doing? But then I was overwhelmed with the people who said that they would play and then would make themselves free on that day. And so then we organized it, and but the plan was to have as many contrabass trombones and cimbassos as possible, and then as many bass trombones as we could get to show up, and then just a couple tenors and tubas to fill out the rest. And I figured, so that was the story then, and people evidently enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really great. Speaking of, he plays a little cimbasso. Bove came out with an album a number of years ago called Cimbasso d'Amore, which is an entire album of Italian love songs played on the cimbasso, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great. So, check that out. All right. So the last thing I want to ask you about is that you, this was 3, 4, 5 years ago that you seriously injured your shoulder, bad, and the story about how you kind of persevered with playing and stuff is really awesome. So can you tell us what happened, and then just briefly kind of how you dealt with it?
Yeah, in New York City, the price per square foot of apartments is a little high.
Especially in your neighborhood, man, 72nd and Central Park West.
Yeah, so so I built a loft bed to sleep in, and I slept in loft beds, and as a kid and college and stuff, and I'd never fallen out of a bed before, but somehow I rolled out of my loft bed and landed on my collarbone. Probably lucky that I'm still here, a different angle, could have landed on my face,
Yeah, and his loft bed was like, I mean, it was like over 6 feet off the ground, right? I mean, it was like way up there.
Yeah, I think it was about 7 feet probably, or 6.5. And so when I woke up, I was on the floor, and I wasn't sure if I could walk because I hurt my back as well, and my collarbone, it turns out, was in about 5 pieces. And so, but I remember going when I was at the hospital, and they told me I thought I had just dislocated it at first because you can't really tell. But so I remember I called Chuck Kerrigan in the morning, who's kind of an expert in equipment and tubas and things like that. I said, Chuck, I'm going to need a tuba that's lefty, because coming up that this happened on December 1st, I think.
Yeah, that's right. It's just horrible timing.
Coming up, I was playing like a Christmas concert with Andrea Bocelli and the New York City Opera, and then I had 8 nutcrackers with the Mark Morris Dance Company, and then I was going to play about 20 of them with the American Ballet Theater, and I was like, I was like, it was kind of busy. It wasn't time to get hurt, So I had to bail on the Bocelli thing, and the first 8 nutcrackers I had to bail on, but
Andrea didn't notice. He told me.
and so Chuck said, well, just take your tuba to Matt Walters at Dilla Music and he'll make it right. So anyways, a rotary valve tuba, Matt told me that a rotary valve tuba is easy to switch to lefty. And so he just turned the paddles around on a rotary valve F tuba that I had so that you could reach them with your left hand. So it had 4 valves. The 5th valve, he said, would be too complicated. And he's like, don't worry about it. So, and then Chuck Kerrigan sent me a tuba stand, a big giant one that could hold the tuba like independently of, you didn't have to do anything. And I left that in the pit. And then I had a surgeon who a week or so later put a big piece of titanium on my collarbone and put a bunch of screws into it. And he said, you can do anything you want as long as you can take the pain. He said, it won't bother me at all.
Wow.
It goes with many things in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was relaxing.
Like touring and emotional pain. I just equated your collarbone in 5 pieces to me, dealing with flight delays. But you're welcome.
And so, I remember I tried out the tuba for the first time, and it probably took 40 minutes, and I could play pretty well left-handed. You'd be amazed at your brain adapting.
Left-handed and without a 5th valve, so you were having to do a little bit of not that by itself that doing that for a professional is hard to figure out the alternate fingerings, but it's like left hand and then the muscle memory is mostly good but not really. It's like
you had to
there's a
use
few layers,
different fingerings, because normally you use your F valve your 5th valve on. I mean, it was an F tuba also, so I was playing the nutcracker on an F tuba, which you didn't have your normal muscle memory. So, and there was one lick, it's actually tricky. There's one that's tricky. It keeps repeating. I can't remember which movement it is.
Wow.
It's one of those with the people dancing.
That's wow, that's crazy, man. Yeah.
So taking a big breath hurt because the muscles around your collarbone, mine had been like all cut open and to put the implant in. So taking a breath, but I think it was good in the long run so I would recommend anyone like a bicyclist who falls, they get the same kind of plate put on their collarbone if you fall on your bike. I recommend playing tuba gently as a rehab for that.
Playing tuba gently as rehab. I'm going to write that down.
That's pretty good out of context and in context. So, well, that story actually, and just your perseverance and and just making it work. I think that you are uniquely qualified to be able to offer some advice to our dear friend Jens Lindemann, who for quite some time now has been dealing with some pretty serious chop problems. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for Jens, either technical advice or just like how to to persevere through something like what he's dealing with.
He's been going through this for a long time. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a couple years now.
Since birth.
Yeah.
Because You know, what I mean, it's really I hate hearing things like this. You know, because it's probably a big trouble for him and his family and his town he lives in. But
Los Angeles.
you know when
Economic.
you know
Westwood has not been the same economically since he started dealing with these chop issues.
so Lance Armstrong recommended a brand of titanium plate that worked really well on my clavicle. And so probably if he would get in touch with me like through social media, or some forums, I'd definitely shoot him back an email real quick at the brand, and a good surgeon with good titanium plates you can get installed. It really can fix anything.
Right across his face, right?
Yeah. Titanium implants for his lips. I like it, man.
Titanium. He can't eat anymore, but
well, that's pretty good, man. You're gonna Lance Armstrong's doctor. Are you talking about his chemical doctor? Or are you talking about his physical doctor, or which doctor are we talking about here?
It's orthopedic surgeon.
Oh, is that what they're calling him these days?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's pretty good, man. Some titanium.
He could probably
implants.
do it. I think I have about 5 screws or so. Maybe for him, hearing about the depth and breadth of his issues, might need more screws probably. But
it'll all be loose. Thank you very much.
The depth and breadth of his issues. Are we still talking about his chops? Oh goodness!
So you guys didn't answer my question at the beginning of this.
Any episode which mentions a character named Darth Cock.
Yeah,
is a perfect
actually.
Okay, so actually, here's a quasi-serious answer to probably serious question. Is one in which it's both funny and there's a tale of adversity which is overcome and some content which either intentionally or accidentally gets conveyed. That's the kind of the perfect podcast for me.
That's actually true. Yeah, and this one didn't have anything that was too abrupt. But yeah, sometimes we have the ability to turn on a dime where it could be something really serious. I mean, there's been some really serious things shared with us, like about direct family members passing away and things like that, and then we can just turn on a dime to just go right back to jackass. Like, yeah, it's a gift. It really is. It's a gift.
You guys are incredible.
We
That's good. We'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. So, Bove, you're gonna like this. So, for Patreon, which I don't know if you're familiar with Patreon or not, but
yes,
So we've got a number of really awesome Patreon patrons, and the reward for getting to $50 per episode was that Lance and I posed for trumpet photos. And I'm gonna send you one of those, so because you're gonna like it. So yeah,
thanks so much.
Yeah, it's
I really appreciate it.
And $75, which we might actually be already at by the time this airs, is we're going to play an online concert. But then $100 is that Lance and I are going to record a trumpet duet. So, yeah, like him and I playing the trumpet. So, which we've been getting feedback that people actually want that to happen, which that would seem like a deterrent to me, but the people are excited. So
can I produce that for you?
Yeah,
I can bring some equipment. I can pick it up at Radio Shack, and we can make it happen.
right.
I'm down.
Hey man, that would be great, man. If we could have the same engineer that the Metropolitan Brass Section uses, for our trumpet album, this could get big, Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we might quit hosting this crappy podcast if this trumpet duo thing really takes over. So
huge.
Huge.
It would be huge.
Lance is holding something up that I can't
You-
see. You what?
Can't say that on the radio.
Oh yeah. Oh dear. There we go. That seems like the note to end on. So, Bove, do you have any kind words for Mrs. Cock before we say goodbye?
Was it Koch?
It was, and she pronounced it cock.
All right. I just want to I've got it for the show notes.
I know that can be pronounced Koch. It can be pronounced Koch. It can be pronounced Coke, like the brothers. She said Mrs. Cock. And I remember Bove and I looking at her like, wait, did she? Yeah, I think she did. All right, cool. So do you have any words for her?
Nope.
That was funny. I was like, wait, is he there? I think I don't. Nope. All right. Well, there you go. Yeah. If I ever want to get out of the music business permanently, maybe we'll have Bove back on for the final blowout because he could tell some pretty awesome stories about me in college. So yeah, he could tell some really good ones. So. But we'll save that for another day. I'm not quite ready to retire. I tried to fully. You what?
You're a fine young man.
Yeah, I was. I definitely was. We'll go with that. So, yeah, Bove was witness to a lot of self destruction from a lot of us at Northwestern.
People that I went to college with should be getting out of prison pretty soon, so we could talk to them too.
Yeah, there you go. See, this is all coming together. So, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun chatting with you guys.
Yeah, I'd rather speak to you than the best recording engineer in town. Nope. All right, Lance. Anything else I'm forgetting?
No,
I didn't. Nope. All right. Well, that is.
Have a great day.
Yeah, that is going to do it for this episode of the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to the Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Joey Santillo. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.